growing medium old in the Lower East Side. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, my name's Royal, and I grew up on Eldred Street between Delancey and Rivington. A new big bank-fueled business improvement district in Chinatown is threatening to eradicate all the Lower East Side landmarks I grew up with. Yet the truth is, being raised on Eldred Street in the early 90s, I felt completely out of place. I had missed the boat, literally. My great-grandparents on both sides had come through Ellis Island on the steerage deck of a third-class freighter, gazing in awe at the Statue of Liberty, but taking its symbolism with a healthy dose of Jewish cynicism. My grandmother was the toughest girl boxer on Houston Street in the 1930s, and my grandparents met and married at the Educational Alliance, which is now in the process of a multi-million-dollar renovation. Though my Bobby and Zadie struggled to move out of the poor hood they lived in, at least they had a support system, a community of Eastern European immigrants who helped each other through the Depression, sharing native dishes and commiserating from their pushcarts. Or at least, that's how my grandparents remember it now, at their house with a swimming pool on Long Island after they've had a few gin and tonics. I felt more out of place at the block parties of my childhood, littered with empty Colt 45 bottles, crack pipes, and boom boxes blasting Rump Shaker. Yet the Lower East Side I grew up in also had moments of beauty. Dominican men selling crushed ice, hydrants blasting jets of water into the streets when it was hot. My artist, social worker father, and neuropsychologist mother had insisted buying, renovating, and raising me and my younger brother in a tenement where a tranny had once committed suicide was a great investment. Yet even by high school, all my friends were too scared to visit me. It wasn't until I was a 20-year-old college dropout, also getting kicked out of my parents' house, that the border below Houston Street started becoming home to hip trust fund faux heroin addicts and frat boys looking for cheap, seedy thrills. American apparel stores and dingy wine bars began opening in earnest. My neighborhood was finally cool, up and coming in exactly the way I wanted to be. But all I could afford was Brooklyn, and without a university degree my parents approved of, I was left to cross the Williamsburg Bridge alone, schlepping my things in black, hefty garbage bags over the East River to a borough I never thought I'd inhabit. I was forced to take pride in my new digs, a dingy railroad apartment in Bushwick, at the time a seedy Brooklyn neighborhood. I had grown up with more than enough ghetto swagger, and I thought I could handle living in the hood again. Besides, I once more felt like a stranger on my old Manhattan streets. I could only afford one pair of ripped jeans and an oversized hoodie, while all of a sudden condos and celebrities made the lower swell with success I didn't have. Tatum O'Neal moved into the old Forward building. My mom bought $12 prosciutto at Gourmet Garage. The prostitutes I had waved hi to on my way to kindergarten all moved back to the Bronx. At least in the outer boroughs, I felt like I belonged. Then, after only a year, I was robbed while in my apartment, waking up to blue flashlights waving around my darkened living room. I hid under my covers until the intruders left, untouched, but shaking under my thin sheets. When I called the police, they laughed at me. I moved further out, into Queens, sharing a walk-up with a former cokehead who claimed she was schizophrenic. I thought she had just spent too many consecutive hours awake, but she went on antipsychotic medication that made her lethargic. Our pads soon filled up with her detritus, outside environment mimicking the confusion inside her head. Vintage costume jewelry, old VHS tapes, discarded lipsticks, and panties were piled on the floor of our kitchen. I bought as many cheap beers as I could every night just to drown out the sound of her impromptu psych rock dance parties and hacking cough as she chain-smoked Winston's. By now, Dad's investment had indeed paid off. Every time I took the rumbling elevated M train into the city to visit my parents, their fridge was stocked with organic produce. They had 3 apartments in their building now, lavish space for Dad to paint and Mom to see clients, which she diagnosed with ADD and dyslexia, relatively innocuous psychological issues I wished my roommate had. My next apartment started out successful. I had co-founded a small BK-based magazine I had big hopes for and moved in with my editor and co-founder. Big mistake. She'd send me angry all-caps emails about deadlines from the next room on a Sunday. After aggressive text fights about advertising dollars, I'd passive-aggressively eat her Chinese takeout leftovers. Though we had 2 floors and a backyard, a spaciousness that came without a high big city price tag, the massive space was filled with inexperience, resentment, and 3 other roommates, all strangers from Craigslist. I found myself spending more and more time back in the Lower East Side. The magazine gained a little legitimacy, pressure which ruined any relationship I had left with my friends and editor, but strangely fixing the feud which had broken my bond with my family. As I neared my mid-20s, I craved a stability Brooklyn had never provided. My parents encouraged that, helping me to pay to take more college classes and clapping the loudest in crowds at magazine events and readings I organized. Sure, being a broke outer borough kid had been a lot of fun at times, but the Lower East Side was calling me back. After 6 years away, I am returning to the neighborhood that no longer looks like my home. Actually moved yesterday. Everything is overpriced, everyone is overdressed, and no one understands or cares about the people and landmarks that populated my past. Drug debutantes scarf pizza at Rocket Joe's, but none of them remember Josie, the old lady who used to work there and who threatened to sick her dogs on my parents when they moved here in the 70s. Holier-than-thou music snobs stand in endless lines outside the Bowery Ballroom without realizing my elementary school bully Robert was stabbed to death in that phone booth on the corner. I have been to rooftop film screenings at Seward Park High School, sipping Hogarden with the well-heeled, and I was the only person who smiled not for flashbulbs, but because my grandmother graduated from the school so many years ago. Part of me does hope to jump on the hipster meteor that is burning my town brighter and richer than ever before. Part of me says screw them all, especially the obviously not native New Yorkers who walk down the streets slowly. But bigger than both those parts is the me who could not be happier. My new bedroom on Henry Street is down the block from my father's old gallery space, my grandfather's first bachelor pad, my great-grandfather's now-gone butcher shop, and the wooden planks that used to spread over the East River, a rickety and dangerous boardwalk that always shifted under your feet. Thank you.